The demographic transition theory describes the changing pattern of mortality, fertility, and growth rates as societies move from one demographic regime to another. It was first introduced by Frank W. Notenstein in the 20th century. Understanding the demographic transition is crucial for fast-growing populations as resources became limited and future generations unaffected. However, history may not provide a satisfactory answer to questions about globalization and its effects. By studying population history, we can learn from past mistakes and avoid repeating them. So, ang demographic transition theory mao'y nagpasabot sa pagbag-o sa mortalidad, fertility, and growth patterns alang sa paspas nga pagtubo sa populasyon. Samtang ang pagtuon sa kasaysayan sa populasyon makatabang sa pagkat-on gikan sa nangaging mga sayop o paglikay sa mga epekto sa globalization. Unya si Frank W. Notenstein ang una ang nagpaila ani nga pag 20th century. Before the Industrial Revolution, population growth was slow due to lost wigs, leading to decline fertility and increase in mortality. In Western Europe, marriage required resources, resulting in women marrying late or not at all. Total fertility rates were moderate at 4 to 5 births of per married woman, and life expectancy at birth was between 25 and 35 years. Population growth rates were low until the early 1700, when it rose about 1% by 1900. In third world countries, transitional fertility was high but still below the biological upper limit of around 15 to 17 births per woman due to contraceptive effects of prolonged breastfeeding and taboos on sex while breastfeeding. Mortality declines were driven by global climatic change rather than disease exchange through exploration and trade. Sa wala pa ang industrial nga revolusyon, ang pagtubo sa populasyon hinay tungod sa ubos nga sweldo, pagkunod sa fertility ug pagtaas sa mortalidad. Ang Western Europe naay marriage required resources ug nagresulta kini nga ang mga babae sa una kay magpakasal sila og dugay o sayo. Ang pag-uswang sa populasyon miuswang hangtod sa sayong bahin sa 1700 apan sa ikatulo nga kalibutan nga mga nasod ang pagtaas sa fertilidad sa mga tawo kay tungod sa mga epekto sa kontraseptibo ug mga bawal. Ang mortalidad ning gamay tungod sa global climate change.
Mortality declines. Mortality rates in Northwest Europe began to decline in 18s, with the first stage of declines due to reductions in contagious and the infectious disease. Smallpox vaccine helped prevented measures, increased income, improved nutrition, and hygiene all contributed to this decline. High-income countries have generally accomplished and mortality decrease through biomedical examination, human genome task, and undifferentiated cell research. Low-income countries have also seen progress in mortality rates, with India's life expectancy rising from 24 years in 1920 to 62 years today, and China's rising from 41 years in 1950 to 1955 to 70 years in 1995-1999. Life expectancy has been increasing globally, with a remarkable graph showing the highest national female life expectancy attained for each calendar youth from 1840 to 2000. The points fail close to a straight line, starting at 45 years in Sweden and ending at 85 years in Japan. Official government projection of longevity gains have been systematically too low relative to actual outcomes. The United Nations classification categorizes countries into more developed countries, 1.2 billion people, less developed countries, 0.7 billion people, and across all categories since the middle 20th century, but stagnation occurred in the less developed countries due to HIV/AIDS rather. More than two-thirds of children aged 15 years acquired HIV/AIDS before they reach the age of 50, with over 60 million people infected worldwide and only around. Fertility transition. Marital fertility in most European provinces declined by about 40% from 1870 to 1930. Child survival and fertility interact in complicated ways, with increased survival raising the return on post-birth investments in children. This economic change influences the cost and benefits of childbearing, making it expensive relative to good consumption. Parents with higher incomes choose to devote more resources to each child, resulting in fewer children. Contraceptive technologies are less important in Europe due to cautious interruptus. The United Nations extended the improvement status in fertility for nations from 1950 to 2050. Birth rates above age 35 are only 1/7 as high in the more developed countries as in the less developed countries, and only 1/5 as high below age 20. The rising age of childbearing itself depresses the total fertility rate, which is a scientific cohort measure below the underlying completed fertilities of generations. The United Nations fertility projections show a continuing slow transition in sub-Saharan Africa and other less developed countries, while fertility decline for less developed countries decelerates as it approaches replacement level. These projections are plausible, but fertility has proven very difficult to forecast in the past. There is no natural lower bound for fertility, nor do theorists provide a mechanism for fertility to respond to see the original, and theorists provide mechanism for the fertility response, such as a way that population will equilibrate as it pre-industrial past. Population growth. The article discusses the relationship between fertility, mortality, and population growth. Figure 3 shows that trajectories or more less and less developed countries from 1950 to 2050. India and list the India and less developed countries had higher initial fertility and mortality rates than European and less developed countries in 1950. All three groups are projected to approach zero growth by 2050. The convergence of fertility and mortality is in contrast to per capita GDP, which has diverged between high-income and low-income countries. Figure 4 shows population growth rates over a longer period, with more developed countries rising above less developed countries before 1950 but drop after World War II. The global population share of more developed countries is projected to drop from 20% to 14% by 2050. United Nations projections suggest that global population growth will be close to zero by about 2100. The National Research Council predicts that the real populace in 2050 will fall somewhere between 2.2 and 10.2 billion, with a high-low range extending from 2.2 to 16.2 billion for the year 2100. The projection for more developed countries' populace is about level with Europe and Japan's decline balance by an increase in the United States and other areas. Most of the projected population increase takes place in less developed countries, which gain 1.8 billion or 43%. However, the greatest proportional gain comes in least developed countries with their higher fertility and more rapid growth. The article includes that there has been rapid global convergence in fertility and mortality among nations over the past 50 years. Although important differences remain, this convergence or fertility and mortality is in marked contrast to per capita GDP, which has tended to diverge between high-income and low-income countries during this time.
Low fertility or longer expectancy. The gain of the population is caused by both low fertility and longer life, but the application of those factors are different. When population again is due to declined fertility, it risks the share of the elderly population without altering the remaining life expectancy of older individuals. Explain. The text is discussion the reason for
population again, which can be caused by both low fertility rates and longer life expectancies. When population again is due to decline fertility rates, it means that there are fewer young people being born, causing a higher percentage of older individuals in the overall population. This does not necessarily affect the remaining life expectancy of older individuals. However, lower fertility rates may result in reduced spending on children but increase the ratio of elderly